Okay, so have you ever had one of those days where you just feel pulled in every direction?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Like you start one thing
Or something else pops up.
exactly, and then by the end of the day, your list is even longer
Yeah.
than it was when you started, and it's just crazy.
It's like my brain is a web browser with like 1,000 tabs open.
Right.
Half of them are frozen.
Yeah, and you know what's so weird to me?
What's that?
The things I finished, I totally forget about them, but the things that are unfinished,
Oh, totally.
they just stick around.
It's like they're stuck.
It's almost like a superpower over us.
Well, there's a name for that.
Really?
Yeah, it's called the Zeigarnik Effect.
The what?
Zeigarnik Effect.
Okay.
And it's basically this thing where our brains, they tend to remember
Okay.
the incomplete tasks more than the completed ones.
That's so interesting. So
Yeah.
why would our brains do that?
Well, one theory is that
Okay.
it's tied to our need for closure.
Okay.
So when we start something, our brains create this kind of like a tension, an open loop,
Okay.
and that just kind of persists until the task is finished.
So it's like our brain is just nagging us
Nagging us, yeah.
constantly to just finish stuff.
Yeah, to tie up those loose ends.
Well-
Like you're more likely to remember to pick up milk
Yeah,
on your way home from work if you see that empty carton in your fridge,
that's so true.
right?
Oh,
It's
no.
like this visual cue,
Yeah.
like a little open loop reminding you to complete that task.
Like a little neon sign
A little neon sign flashing.
in our brain
Yeah.
for milk.
Get milk.
So this isn't just some random thing. This was actually studied.
Yeah, this was actually studied by Bluma Zeigarnik. She was
Yeah.
a psychologist
Okay.
back in the early 20th century.
Wow, way back then.
Yeah.
So what did she find?
Well, she observed waiters in a cafe,
Oh, wow.
and she noticed that they had a better memory
Mm-hmm.
for orders that were in progress
Okay.
than those they had already served.
Oh, interesting.
So once the task was complete, it was just gone from memory.
Like, poof.
Yeah.
So like our brains are wired to just prioritize the unfinished business?
Yeah, prioritize unfinished business.
Like a project manager in there
We have a built-in project manager.
that never forgets
That's right.
what we need to do.
Exactly. And while that can be helpful
Yeah.
for remembering errands or deadlines,
Sure.
it can also be a source of stress.
Oh, yeah.
If we have all these open loops piling up.
Okay, so we've got these open loops. How does it actually,
Right.
like, what's the stress part of this?
Well, imagine, your brain is like a computer.
Okay.
Okay. So every open loop is like a program running in the background,
Oh,
taking up processing power.
I see.
So the more loops you have open,
Yeah.
the slower your system runs.
Right.
And then you start to feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
scattered, less able to focus.
That's so me.
Yeah, and it's not just about feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
There's also some research
Yeah.
that suggests that these open loops can actually increase stress hormones.
What?
Yeah,
Right.
and they can even impact sleep.
So just thinking about these unfinished tasks can mess with my sleep.
Well, it's not so much thinking about the tasks
Okay.
as it is like that underlying mental tension
Right.
that they create,
Got it.
So it's like those open loops,
Yeah.
they keep part of our brain activated,
Oh,
even when we're trying to relax or sleep.
so my brain's working overtime.
Yeah, working overtime.
And when I don't realize it.
Exactly.
Oh, bad.
And over time, this can lead to a whole cascade of negative effects on our well-being.
So are we just doomed to be ruled by these open loops?
Not necessarily.
Oh, good.
Now that we understand how this effect works, we can actually start to come up with strategies
Okay.
to manage them
Okay.
more effectively.
I'm all ears.
And we can even use them to our advantage.
Okay, so how do we turn these things into allies?
Well, first we got to talk about task management.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking about these open loops, and they just kind of take over our brain.
They do. They really do.
Yeah, so I need like some actionable advice here.
Okay.
Like, how do we manage these things?
Well, I think, how they say a tidy space equals a tidy mind?
Right.
It's kind of like that with tasks.
Okay.
One of the most effective things you can do is just get organized.
Okay.
Prioritize.
Okay, but how do we prioritize, like, when everything feels important?
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
But you have to remember, not all tasks are created equal.
Right.
Some things have real deadlines.
Right.
Others are more like, it would be nice to do this sometime.
Okay.
So you got to identify those must-dos.
So you make a list and you just kind of separate the urgent
Yeah,
from the someday items?
exactly.
Okay.
And then within your must-do list, you got to break things down into smaller, bite-sized chunks.
Okay.
This helps reduce that feeling of overwhelm.
Yeah.
Makes it feel less daunting.
It's like instead of climbing a mountain in one go, you build a staircase.
I love that analogy. And as you're working through those smaller steps,
Yeah.
celebrate those mini wins.
Okay.
Each item that you check off, you're closing a loop,
Huh?
and it gives you a little boost of dopamine,
Oh.
which can fuel your motivation to keep going.
It's like leveling up in a video game.
Yeah.
Every time you finish something.
Yes.
It's like you get to the next level.
That's right.
I like that.
And speaking of video games,
Okay.
have you noticed how they masterfully use the Zeigarnik Effect?
Oh, absolutely.
Cliffhangers, unresolved storylines.
Oh, yeah.
Just one more quest.
One more turn.
Yeah, they're intentionally keeping those loops open.
It's true. They totally hacked our brains
Yeah,
to keep us playing those games.
they know what they're doing.
So we need to figure out how to hack our own brains
We do.
and use it to our advantage.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, that's where things like setting deadlines
Okay.
and creating mini challenges can really come in handy.
Okay, I like that.
So, for example, instead of saying I'm going to write a novel,
Yeah, which is so overwhelming.
way too big,
Yeah.
break it down into smaller milestones.
Okay.
Like write 500 words a day
Okay.
or finish one chapter by the end of the week.
Okay, so we're creating these smaller goals with deadlines.
Yes.
So it's like a bunch of little mini open loops
That's right.
that keep us motivated
And on track.
to finish that big thing.
Exactly. And each time you hit a deadline, you get that sense of accomplishment.
Yes.
Another loop closed,
Uh-huh.
fuels your motivation to keep going.
Okay. This all makes sense.
Mm.
But what about those times when you just can't seem to shut off?
Right.
Those open loops, like even when you're trying to relax or sleep.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
That's when it's time to call in some reinforcements.
Oh, okay.
You know, like give your brain a break from all that processing.
So what kind of reinforcements?
Like
meditation, yoga, a long walk in nature.
all of those can be super helpful. It's about finding what works for you to disconnect
Uh-huh.
from that constant barrage of tasks and worries.
Right.
And mindfulness exercises can help to become
Mhm.
more aware of those nagging thoughts
Mhm.
and gently redirect your attention
Yeah.
to the present moment.
So instead of letting those loops just run wild,
Yeah.
we're taking back control
Exactly.
and choosing what we focus on.
Yes. It's like training a puppy.
Okay.
You know, at first it's going to pull on the leash
Right.
and try to go in every direction.
Yeah.
But with patience and consistency, you can teach it to walk calmly by your side.
I love that analogy.
See?
We're training our brain to be less like a crazy puppy.
Yeah.
More like a,
Well-behaved,
like calm.
focused companion.
I like that.
It's all about finding that balance,
That's okay.
between harnessing the power of open loops
Right.
without letting them rule our lives.
Okay. This has been really helpful,
Good.
but I feel like there's even more to explore here. Like, what about the long-term implications of these loops?
That's a great question.
Yeah, like what happens if we just keep putting things off
Right.
and they just keep accumulating?
Well, that's something that our source touches on
Okay.
in a really thought-provoking way.
This whole Zeigarnik effect,
Yeah.
it's got me thinking about the bigger open loops.
Right.
You know, the ones we kind of shove to the back of our mind,
Yeah.
the dreams we put on hold, the projects we never quite get around to.
Yeah. The things we always say we're going to do someday.
And the conversations, we keep meaning to have, but we just
We just don't.
don't. And
It's a great point, and honestly, it really resonated with me in the source material.
okay.
It's like we get so caught up in managing like the day-to-day
Right.
errands, emails, all that stuff. We
Right.
kind of lose sight of
Yeah.
those bigger, more meaningful aspirations.
Right. And I'm guessing those bigger ones don't just like disappear.
They don't go anywhere.
They just kind of lurk
They,
in the shadows.
yeah,
Creating this low-level hum
yeah.
of unfinished business
That's a great way to put it.
in our subconscious.
Yeah, and the source even says
Okay.
that some of these unresolved desires,
Okay.
like dreams we put on hold,
Yeah.
can become this heavy weight that we carry with
A
us.
heavy weight.
Wow.
It's like we're just dragging around these invisible burdens.
And they just keep getting heavier
Yeah.
the longer we ignore them.
And the source even takes it a step further
Yeah, it does.
and says that we might even end up carrying these burdens
Yeah.
to our deathbeds.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah, wow.
You know, filled with all this regret for the things we wish we had done.
Like, what are we waiting for?
Yeah.
Why are we letting these important dreams just gather dust?
Right. And that's why the source ends with this question.
Okay.
What is the Zeigarnik Effect
Okay.
that has been roaming around in your mind
Uh-huh.
that you wish you could have done but haven't until now?
Wow. That is deep.
Yeah. It makes you think.
Yeah, it really is a challenge to confront.
Yeah.
these lingering open loops.
Yeah.
And ask ourselves why.
Right. Like, what are we so afraid of?
Yeah.
Why are we holding ourselves back?
This makes you realize that the Zeigarnik Effect isn't just about
Right.
productivity or checking things off a list.
It's not just about getting things done.
Yeah,
It's about something bigger.
it's about living a life,
Yes.
that feels aligned with our values and our aspirations.
You said it perfectly.
It's about taking ownership
Yeah.
of those open loops and deciding,
Yeah.
which ones we want to close.
Which ones we need to let go of.
Yeah.
Which ones we need to reframe.
I think that is a perfect takeaway
Yeah, I think so.
for our listeners.
Absolutely.
So, dear listeners, as you go about your day, we encourage you to reflect on your own Zeigarnik burdens.
Take a look at those open loops.
Yeah. What unfinished tasks or dreams are weighing on your mind?
What can you do?
Yeah. And what steps can you take, even small ones,
Even baby steps.
to move towards closure and create a life
Yes.
that feels more meaningful and fulfilling?
I love that.
Until next time, keep exploring
Keep learning.
and keep those cognitive loops in check.